Before I start, a bit about Orchid. We have over 5,000 Sage 300 sites around the world running Orchid modules, and they're all located in over 60 countries. We have an average of 2 Orchid modules running per site, and these sites are supported by over 400 Sage business partners scattered around the world. We're all about improving efficiency and productivity, and we're based right here in Sydney, Australia. We've won over the years over 10 industry awards, the latest one being the Sage Development Partner of the Year award for Australia and New Zealand. We have 13 integrated modules for Sage 300, and by integrated I mean fully developed within the Sage development environment, so they have exactly the same look and feel as any other Sage module. So should you elect to go with any Orchid module, because they work and look and feel like other Sage modules, you should be able to pick them up and run with them relatively quickly. And at this stage, we've been in business for just over 25 years. We have a special relationship with Microchannel, as Microchannel have over 50% of our users here in Australia and New Zealand. So over 50% of the Sage 300 users using Orchid modules in the region, Australia and New Zealand, are being supported by Microchannel. So that equates to over 450 sites of the 900 sites we have running Orchid modules in the region. These sites are relying on Orchid's modules to improve the efficiency, productivity, and accuracy of their Sage 300 systems. And what we're going to chat about today is the automation and acceleration of business processes within Sage 300, which I'll be focusing on today with you. Before I get stuck into that, I'd like to just run through what our modules are and what they do, and point out the ones that I'll be going through with you today. So our modules fall into 5 separate categories: collaboration and intelligence, automation and productivity, tailoring your system and integration, streamlining financial processes, and operations management. Now, collaboration and intelligence includes Info Explorer, our business intelligence tool for Sage 300, Notes, which gives you online context-sensitive notes, which I'll be running through with you shortly, and Document Management Link. Automation and productivity consists of Process Scheduler, which I'll go through with you in some detail today as to how we can use Process Scheduler to accelerate those business processes, and Report Runner, which works very closely alongside Process Scheduler in delivering reports and information to the right people at the right time. Tailoring your system and integration consists of Extender, data views, and optional tables. And I'll be spending some time running through Extender with you today, because with Extender we can actually customize Sage 300 and build in additional processes which you may need to run your businesses more effectively and efficiently. Streamlining financial processes consists of EFT processing, inter-entity trade, and inter-entity transactions. And I'll be mentioning them towards the end of the presentation because they can be used to streamline specific processes, accelerate certain processes, EFT processing around bank transactions, and inter-entity transactions around more complex transactions that might ripple across multiple companies within a group. So if you are working with a group of companies and those companies transact with each other or do things on behalf of each other via loan accounts, inter-entity transactions may well help you with automating processes. And lastly, operations management, which consists of return material authorizations, and bin tracking, which is keeping a track of your inventory at the bin level within your Sage 300 locations, inventory locations. And there I'll be touching on RMA, or Return Material Authorizations, because with RMA we can streamline and accelerate the business processes around the returns process, which could be creating credit notes, could be handling the QA side of things, could be returning inventory back to suppliers, and replacing goods. So creating replacement orders and fulfilling those new orders through to customers who had originally returned the inventory. So business process automation, what is it all about? And most importantly, why would you go ahead and look at automating processes to accelerate your business? Well, manual processes create opportunities for delay and error and poor customer service. So automating processes, particularly ones that are repetitive, can cut this type of thing out. So with business process automation, what you can do is seek to increase efficiency by reducing redundant or mundane tasks. And as a result of these things, what you can do is have the flow-on benefit go through to your customers who will receive better service. And as a result, that should result in improved profitability for yourselves. Now that's the why. Why automate business process automation? And if we then go a step further back to what is it? What is a business process? And really any business task performed regularly by following a repeatable set of steps is a business process and is a candidate for acceleration and automation. Any business software, Sage 300 for example, has taken you down that business process automation road already. You'll find that compared to using a simpler system or a manual system, you already have automated processes already. And what you're looking at doing here is just taking it to the next step, adapting, customizing it to your specific requirements. How do we go about doing this? Well, the best way is to take a rigorous approach to auditing business processes, then identifying and prioritizing candidates for automation, and then after that, developing an action plan to realize the benefits that automation can deliver for you. And this will result in improved productivity, better service delivery, increased transparency within your business, and a result of all of this will result in increased innovation, customer satisfaction, and underpinning all of this, improved profitability. So here are some examples of the type of things we can automate. And what I'm going to be doing is running through some of Orchid's modules and just showing how they can be used to automate these processes. So running down the left-hand side of the slide, I've got some of Orchid's modules, which can be used across a variety of different areas within your business. So these would be, in this case, process scheduler, report runner, extender, and notes. And what I've got in the colored blocks is examples of specific things that we can do. So with process scheduler, for example, what we can do is use it to automate daily recurring tasks like your day ends that you'd run in inventory control, posting batches, doing backups, and making sure that your system is okay, making sure that the disk space is adequate, and making sure that your integrity checks are okay. Then if we start combining process scheduler with report runner, what we can do is look at automating the processes of delivering information via reports. And these reports could take the form of your crystal reports, your general ledger financial reports, or it could take the form of business intelligence reports in the form of Info Explorer cubes. If we then extend process or match up process scheduler with extender, we can then start looking at interrogating your underlying data and alerting people to specific conditions. And if those conditions are met, send emails or other messages to these people along with the next steps required to rectify or look into the situation. So that could be an email with a link back into Sage 300 to the pertinent screen and the pertinent information that needs to be looked at. If we then look at Extender by itself, can be used for systems integration, so automating that process, keeping things in sync on a real-time basis, and also dealing with custom processes. So, for example, with sales orders, you may want, as you enter sales orders, have it auto-assemble assemblies for you in the background. Then linking an extender with the notes module, what you can then do is provide pertinent information to your operators at the right point in time, and also create links to processes which need to be automated. So for example, here I've got invoices being generated and emailed automatically from within the order stream. So jumping into each one in turn here, initially let's have a look at Process Scheduler by itself. Down the left-hand side here, I have a number of different things that we can do with Process Scheduler. And all these processes can be automated, can be run overnight, or at points in time when the system is not very busy. And the benefit of this for you is that once these schedules are set up, you know that these will just happen for you in the background. So, and what we can also do is configure these processes to tell you if things have worked or if they haven't worked, or both. So you may want to be told, for example, that there's been an issue with your data integrity when there's an issue, but you may not want an email every day saying that your data integrity has been checked. So what you can do is fine-tune these processes along with the alerts coming back to you. So over here, for example, we have checking data integrity, either of specific modules or multiple modules across multiple databases or companies as well, if you need that. Dumping and loading databases. So you might be keeping a separate test area to test new processes within Sage 300, or provide a test environment and training environment for people. You can refresh business intelligence cubes. You can run service pack audits to see and make sure you're running on the latest versions of all the modules. You can run other schedules. And what you can do is send emails, run scripts. So these, I'll be going through a few of these scripts later on. And these scripts would generally be running through the data, looking for particular conditions. For example, an automated process may need to start based on certain transactions might have been entered, but now need to be authorized before they can be posted. It could be a trigger to have that process kick off, and posting all your different types of batches within Sage 300. So instead of having to hunt through all the modules, making sure that everything's been posted, what you may want to do is when the system's quiet at night is just have it go through and make sure that everything has been posted. Moving further down here, we've got the ability to run programs. So you may have custom processes encapsulated in external programs. This might relate to integration, for example. And what you can do is then automate these processes by scheduling them to happen at certain times. Macros, if you needed to schedule those, we can do that. And also deal with GL consolidations. So if you do, any of you do have multiple databases and you are exporting and importing the consolidation information into the consolidated general ledger, what this will do is do that for you automatically. And down at the bottom here, we've got the automation of the process of opening and closing period ends. So you can either flip from one period to another at a certain predefined time at the end of each month, or you might need to have a process or a policy in place whereby you keep a few periods open. So what you would be doing is closing the earliest period and opening a new period after the latest one that's open. So running into the software itself, this is where we would go through process scheduler in the setup area down here and into schedules. Got a number of schedules over here. Let's have a look at the running of reports, or let's actually go and have a look at this integrity check over here, which, sorry, is not an integrity check. It's actually running some extender scripts. Here over here, we've got dumping of databases because you might want to make a copy. And here is a day end. So it's running day end processes and it's doing it across different companies. And what I've got is the ability to then send emails off on different conditions. So that's a process scheduler. If we now have a look at process scheduler in conjunction with report runner, what report runner lets you do is provides you with a nice looking interface to run financial statements, your GL financial reports, and also crystal reports. Could be the standard crystal reports you get with Sage 300, or it might be custom reports that Microchannel may have developed for you, or you may have developed yourselves. And what we can then do is group these reports together. So in the top left-hand corner over here, I've got the ability to run a group of reports or check or tick the ones that I do want to run. And what I can do is schedule those to run at certain times as well. Once scheduled, I can have those reports either be stored away in a common place on your file server, for example, or if you're using one of these hosted services like Dropbox or OneDrive, you could have them stored up there. And you can also have them emailed. So over here, what I'm doing is, here's a snippet of an email, emailing an age trial balance report. On the right-hand side over here, what we've got is showing how we can schedule these reports. So we're doing it on a particular day of the month in this case. And what we can do as well is run these across different databases. So that's what I'm showing down here towards the right-hand side. So if I go back through to Sage 300 again, and let's just have a closer look at that. So it's in this area over here that what I can do is go off and start working with my different reports. So over here, for example, here I have some a nice interface for crystal reports, but I can also use this point here to go off and schedule these reports. So over here, I can also edit what is there. So instead of having to enter all the different criteria, you may want to have it pre-populated to certain information for certain users. And that's what I can do here in the setup area. And then when it comes to the report, it's just simply a question of double clicking on the report concerned. You can also set up security over here so that only certain people have access to certain reports and particular data behind those reports as well. What I can also do is have a look at reports that have already been generated. So this is a great way to keep a history of different reports that have been generated over time, and may well help you with that process of storing this information should you need to get back to it at a later stage. So now moving across to Extender and Process Scheduler. What Process Scheduler will let us do is take Extender scripts and run those periodically over your Sage 300 data to look for certain criteria. And once that criteria is met, alert people to the fact that this criteria is now active and needs to be acted on. So what I've got over here as an example on the left-hand side is an extender script which runs through looking for low inventory levels. And what it's doing is it's comparing the minimum level against the quantity on hand by location. And if the quantity on hand is lower than that minimum, what it does is bundles all this information together and sends an email to the appropriate person. And with that email comes a series of links. So here is a link over here, and if the recipient of the email was to click on that link, what it'll do in this case is take them through to the IC location detail area so that they can research why that inventory is low and determine whether or not they need to call in inventory from other locations or other branches, or indeed order more inventory. And on the right-hand side here, what we're doing is some credit management, so collections management. So as customers become overdue, what happens is a script runs through, periodically runs through all your data. If it establishes that a customer is overdue, so over here, for example, it's established customer 1105 is over their credit limit of 19,000. It's now sitting at 19,461. And once again has a link here that you can drill into to establish what exactly is going on. So if the recipient of the email wants to look at it further, they don't need to find within Sage where the pertinent information is. This will take them directly through to where they need to go. If they're not currently logged into Sage, it will of course ask them for their credentials prior to taking them through to this point. So going back into Sage again and having a look at Extender now, and the setup area. If we have a look at the scripts area, here I have that AR customer aging email notification, for example. And what it is a script. It's written in a programming language called Python. And what it's doing is going through looking to see who is over their credit limit. I'll just check that back in. And the neat thing about all these scripts is the fact that they are all contained within your database, within your Sage 300 database. So every time you back up your database, you can be confident that these processes of yours are being backed up at the same time. So if you need to move from one server to another, for example, it's just a case of dumping the data from the one server, loading it in a second server, and those customizations, those automated business processes will go along with that. Right, so the next one I was just going to have a short look at was automation with Extender. And a couple of examples here might be the integration of data across websites and also custom processes which kick in based on other processes that are taking place. And in order to give you a better understanding of this, I need to just describe what Extender is doing in a bit more detail. What Extender does is it allows you to customize the underlying business logic sitting in Sage 300. So this isn't at a screen level where typically customizations take place. This is at a deeper level where Sage has actually coded the actual underlying business processes. So if a particular area of Sage is changed, for example, you might change the credit limit on a customer, what you can do is with Extender is kick in some additional processes to run based on that. And it's all done in real time as well. So, for example, with that credit limit, what you could do is put in some additional validation around the credit limit and stop it from happening if the person concerned shouldn't be allowed to create a new credit limit that high. Or you might want to start a new process, which then sends off an email to somebody else to approve that credit limit and have it updated within your Sage 300 system. And the beauty of this is the fact that because you're making this change at such a low level, anything that accesses this information through Sage has to go through these custom processes that you've defined. So if somebody's written a macro, for example, to automate things, that macro needs to go through the new processes that you've defined, even importing data. So you might import your customers with new credit limits. If you've got a something in place along the lines of what I've described, it won't let it happen unless the user doing the importing has got the rights to create a credit limit to that level. And another big benefit is that any of these changes will be seen by both the standard screens, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and also the new web screens. So with, for example, this change to a credit limit, it could be kicking in new processes, and it's the same process as no matter whether you're instigating them from the web screens or from the standard VB screens. Another example over here would be the creation of assemblies while you're doing putting orders together. So if you don't have adequate assemblies of something as you process orders, as you actually enter those orders, you could have Extender have a look at these orders and compare it to what inventory is available and fire off new processes to create these assemblies if there isn't sufficient stock in place to satisfy these orders for you. Now, Extender goes a whole lot further than that. It will alert you to any changes in real time, which is fantastic for integration. So rather than doing it periodically and updating a website you might have, say, once a day, what you can have it do is as prices change, for example, in inventory control, you can have that immediately reflect in your web store. And what you can also do is create your own new screens and indeed your own new tables as well. But rather than talk about it any further, what I might do is just show you a bit of what I'm trying to describe. So sitting here in Extender in the setup area, those scripts I mentioned can be tagged to any object within Sage, be it a customer or what have you. So for example, here is one over here, which is showing credit information for you. Here is that one which I mentioned earlier on, which is dealing with the email notification. You may have some more complicated ones which are now sending off order confirmations, might be sending invoices or even statements with all the associated invoices. Have all of that be bundled up and sent off to your customer. So automating that whole process. So rather than having to pull all this information in manually, it would just require the click of a button to run these different invoices, bundle them up into a series of PDFs along with a summary statement, and send all of that off to your customer. In addition to these scripts, what we can do is, or what you can do is create your own tables. So quite often custom processes require custom information, which may be needed to be kept somewhere else. And historically, or more typically, we find that people keep this information in spreadsheets, which is not then easily accessible from within Sage 300, and in other ways. So what you can actually do here is create your own new tables within Sage 300. So here we've got a process capturing Net Promoter Score information, for example. And what this is doing is then creating a new table for us in Sage 300. And not only that, what it's doing is it's going off and it's creating a screen so that you can then enter this data into the system, and you can also import and export it as well. And this can also then be used as the basis for additional processing that you may need to take place. Because quite often that, as I mentioned, does require additional information which may not be sitting within Sage 300. Throughout all of this, I have been speaking quite extensively to emailing and using email as a way to alert your users and operators to a process that has just kicked in. And what you can do is customize those emails that are being sent out, and you can include these merge fields. So here, for example, is an email that's being sent off, and what it's going to include over here is the customer's name and their number, along with what their credit limit was and now what it's proposed to be instead. So the next area that I just want to talk about is now hooking in the power of Extender with Orchid's Notes module. And Orchid's Notes module lets you show context-sensitive information to your operators from within any Sage 300 screen. So over here, for example, I'm looking at the order entry screen. I'm looking at a particular customer. This is customer 1200, Mr. Ronald Black. And on this order, I'm actually highlighting this first line here, which is A11030, a fluorescent desk lamp. And on the right-hand side, what it's showing me is information pertaining to the customer itself. It's showing me via Extender what the credit limit is now and when it was last changed. It's giving me information relating to both this customer and this item. So it'll only show up when you're looking at this customer, Mr. Ronald Black, and this fluorescent desk lamp. And it's giving me a link to pertinent information over there. And then down here, it's a bit covered up, but we're showing information just relating to the item. So here it's really Notes in its standard form is giving you additional information to enhance collaboration between your users. It's facilitating the sharing of information, but we can take that a step further. What we can do is also include boxes of information which come through via extender via the extender module. So over here, for example, we've asked Extender to show us any orders which are still outstanding. So this may be pertinent for your processes. It might help in accelerating your processes here because you're entering a new order. May be very relevant to see what this customer has currently got on back order. Does it make sense to keep these in separate orders? And are they actually duplicating an order? Do we need to put it in again? Also from this screen, you may want to kick off some sort of credit control process. And so over here, what we're showing is the amounts due. And in this case, it's all current, so it's all good. But we may well be dealing with a customer who wants to place a new order, but they are very overdue. What we can do from here is start initiating that whole process through clicking on the area here that you'd want to look at in more detail, which will give you a list of invoices that are overdue. And you could then have a process button over here, which would then email those overdue invoices plus a statement through to your customer, hence automating that whole business process and accelerating it, making it a whole lot quicker. Down here, we've got another process. So here I'm looking at the order entry screen again. And in this case, I'm looking at some additional process buttons where I'm now able to, from within the order entry area, is store a copy of the invoice and then email it off to the customer at the same time. So if I just go back into Sage 300, and let's go off to order entry. And I'll go to shipment entry. And let me go to one of the current orders. So here I'm dealing with Mr. Ronald Black. And as I pointed out, here we've got a list of all the outstanding orders. They're aging. If I needed to do some work on the aging side, I could click one of the buttons over here. And in this case, it's been configured to go through to the customer inquiry screen. But what we could have done is, or what may have been more pertinent at this stage, is to look at one of these other outstanding orders. So let me do that. If I double click on any one of these, it will then take me through to that order. And there it is popping up. So what I can also do, you may have noticed these little icons in the top right-hand side here. If there was some information here that needed to kick off a new process or tell somebody else about it, what I could do is click on the little envelope icon here. And what it'll do is actually send a link through to a colleague, which will automatically open this screen up for the colleague along with that underlying information. I've just got some. I'm not connected to the email server here, so that's why it's complaining. And over here, this other little icon here is just telling me that there are some notes sitting behind this screen and this particular data behind this screen. So what I've done is so far is just run through different scenarios with different modules, and I've just shown it to you as we went along of it happening in action. Now, obviously, these processes, a lot of them would be custom processes that you would need to see, which may be fairly unique for your businesses. So what I would urge you to do is have a chat to your Microchannel consultant about them, and they'll be able to advise whether the processes can be effectively automated or not. But what we can do is also automate processes in other areas as well. So for example, with our EFT processing module, What you could be doing is uploading files to the bank. You're not having to rekey information. You could be emailing your remittance advices to your vendors without having to do any of that manually. And if you're actually direct debiting any of your customers, you could have it create the relevant receipt batches and also send the relevant files to the banks to automatically deal with those direct debits for you. Moving on to inter-entity transactions and inter-entity trade. This, if you do have a group of companies, can be a huge time saver in terms of process automation. So with inter-entity transactions is the scenario where you may have companies in your group doing things on behalf of other companies within the group, and they're interacting via loan accounts at the general ledger level. What will happen there is you're only having to enter any of these entries once. And what will then happen is they'll be routed via the loan accounts, which you will have set up in the background, and the transactions on the other side will be dealt for you. And your loan accounts will be kept 100% in balance all the time. So, for example, you might be paying the electricity bill on behalf of a number of different companies. You might be entering that in one invoice in company one, but you may be spreading that across 5 or 6 different companies. And without something like this, you'd have to then go into the other 5 or 6 companies and process separate transactions through to the relevant loan accounts. With this, you just process the one entry in AP and it deals with everything else for you, automating that whole process. With inter-entity trade, this is where you might have companies within your group trading with each other. And so the mirror transactions are being created for you. So company one might raise your distribution company might raise an order with your manufacturing company. So the purchase order in the distribution company will automatically create a sales order for you in the manufacturing company. And when it's shipped out of the manufacturing company, you can then have it automatically process a receipt for you in the distribution company. And that'll work with either order entry and purchase orders, and it's working in both directions, but also it'll work with accounts receivable and accounts payable. And if you're then processing bank transfers between the companies or settling AP in one company against the related AR account in the second company, you can have all that ripple through and be dealt with automatically, really speeding up, accelerating that whole process. Another one, which if you're dealing with inventory and you're dealing with returns, is a big time saver in terms of being able to automate processes, is RMA, because with the return material authorizations module, you've got a central point from which you can process credit notes if required. You can process replacement orders if required. You can process repairs, simple repairs if those are needed, along with returns, back-to-back returns back to your suppliers. Really accelerating those business processes for you. But in this case, we're looking at specific functionality around banking, around intercompany, and around inventory, whereas right up front I was showing you the information in or processes that could be applied across different modules. So just in summary, what I've done is I've given you a more detailed run through 4 of the modules: notes, process scheduler, report runner, and extender. I've shown hopefully how through automating and accelerating business processes, you can improve productivity, service delivery, and transparency, resulting in increased innovation, customer satisfaction, and compliance. And then lastly, I just took some more specific examples around other modules we've got and how they can be used to accelerate business processes. And there I was working with EFT, inter-entity, and RMA.